lack of knowledge is a lack of power. Let's face a simple fact here that right now, civilization is facing the 6th mass extinction of life on this planet.
The new discoveries that you and I are talking about, Bruce, they present such a different way of thinking. It's so different. In a single lifetime, the revolution in the way we're being invited to think. Our world is changing. We can't stop that. We've got to either think and live differently or resist that change, and that's where the struggle comes from. Hello, my name is Gregg Braden, and I want to welcome you to this very special edition of Missing Links. Today, I am very blessed to have with me a dear friend, a colleague I've known for more years than either one of us can count. I've had the privilege of touring the world and speaking with this man on every continent of the earth about the new science that is overturning 150 years of scientific thinking when it comes to you and me, and the way we think about our bodies, our relationship to the world, to the past, to the future, to one another. We were recently invited as a team to speak at the United Nations in New York as the 2030 developmental goals, the new sustainable development goals, were being developed. And I want to share with you a little bit about what happened during that meeting and what it meant to us, what we had the opportunity to share with the United Nations. So, Bruce Lipton, thank you so much for being with us on Missing Links, and welcome to the show tonight.
Well, thank you, Greg. I certainly appreciate being here with you and this wonderful audience. Thank you very much.
What really happened for you and I, we were blessed to be invited to speak to some very specific groups as the Sustainable Development Goals were being developed. And you know, you and I never really talked afterward about what that was all about for you, how you felt about it, why you think it was important. And I thought it might be interesting to do that now. So I'd like to just ask you, when we had the opportunity to speak at the UN, how did you feel about sharing the new discoveries, and do you feel that it was a receptive audience that we had?
Well, first of all, I enjoyed very much the opportunity to give them some new information because they're really operating from outdated science. And how can you plan the future if your whole background is really not living up to the current understanding of the world? So this gave us an opportunity to give them some new information. I felt they were really very receptive, also very confused about, well, this is very different than their normal operating procedure. But for us, it was really important because the new science reveals that we're moving through an evolutionary paradigm at this time. And it's necessary for an organization such as the United Nations to be fully informed of this, because how can we successfully move into the future on problems that we've been carrying from the past?
Yeah, you know, I was really encouraged first by the invitation. And I'll just be very honest with our listeners here. The United Nations, when we talk about the UN, it is not like there's one specific UN. There are UNs within UNs. It's like a big company in some respects. And there were some really excited, forward-thinking young people who are very interested in embracing the new ideas and applying them to what we see happening in the world and where it's moving. And there were some other people there that were, I'm just going to use the word a little reluctant, because the new discoveries that you and I are talking about, Bruce, they present such a different way of thinking. It's so different. In a single lifetime, the revolution in the way we're being invited to think. You know, we've asked science to tell us who we are. And for 150 years, since the time of Charles Darwin, science has been revealing the deepest truths of our existence. And the question is, now, are scientists willing to embrace the truths the science is revealing and apply those truths in the world as we're moving forward with organizations like the UN?
Well, it's very difficult for them, because if you've had your whole career and this is the way you understood life, and you did research this way and you did work this way, and then someone walks in the door and goes, well, you know, that's not exactly the way it is. It sort of pulls the rug out from them, and they feel very insecure. I mean, it was exactly like this when quantum physics was introduced to the world, because the only physicists were Newtonian physicists. And then imagine you had your whole career, university professor, research guy, and you walk in one day and somebody says, especially young guys, because that's who they were, says, well, your idea about the universe is you know, really incorrect. And it's like, what? So basically, there's a lot of resistance, because if this is what you've done your whole life, it's not easy for some people to say, oh, okay, let's drop what I've done and let's go on a whole new tact.
Yeah, there was some resistance. You know what I found really encouraging? Well, I felt like it was a little microcosm of the world, speaking to the people, because there are so many different and very unique views. And I think you know about what I'm going to share with you. While we were speaking, we'd already started the meetings. The door opened in the back of the room, and a few people filed in and stood along the back wall. They never sat down, and then they left. And you and I looked at each other, and we thought, what was that?
Yeah.
We didn't know until after the meeting that the Secretary General of the UN had sent a team to check us out. They wanted to see what we were saying and where the relevance may have fallen. And we also found, what we heard afterward, was that they turned on the CCTV, the closed circuit TVs, in the UN complex for people that wanted to hear our presentation who were not in the room with us. And I found that really encouraging. I was excited. I was encouraged to know that had happened. And I think that's an indication there's an openness for new ideas.
Let's face a simple fact here that right now, civilization is facing the sixth mass extinction of life on this planet. Now, 5 times in history, life was thriving, and some event essentially wiped out 70 to 90% of life. Today, we're in those numbers right now. And what's more important about it is science has recognized that it's human behavior that is responsible for the extinction that will actually do us in. And the significance about that is very simple. It says if you want to survive, then you cannot keep doing what we've been doing. So the old stories are actually the problem. And, Einstein's quote, you can't solve the problems with the same thinking that created the problems. And unfortunately, you and I have been at the leading edge of a new science and a new understanding of the world. And it's been really great to lecture with you and to go out because instead of lecturing to our former colleagues, it's really taking the message and talking to the public, because the public is the one that really needs this information. Knowledge is power. Lack of knowledge is a lack of power. And the knowledge that they've been operating from on the basic science that we always thought that was truth turns out to be flawed. So much flawed that's why we're creating our own extinction, because our belief systems are flawed. And now we have the opportunity to go out and talk to the public and offer them a more empowering understanding of life than the conventional belief that we're just victims of circumstances.
So you and I are both scientists, and I think this is why we received the invitation in the way that we did. You're a life scientist, biologist. I'm an earth scientist, a geologist by degree. And from our unique perspectives, although they're very different sciences, it's hard to draw a line from one to the other because they're so interrelated. Both of them are involved with cycles of time, cycles of experience. And you're talking to me about a cycle, the extinction cycle that you're talking about right now.
Yeah, and it's really important that you brought up the fact that while earth science and life sciences are coming together here, the idea of a separation, which was some sense based on a Newtonian physics, that there's a material existence and an energy existence and they don't relate to each other. Well, that's gone by the wayside because quantum mechanics revealed there's only one thing, it's energy, and everything is interconnected. And when it comes to Earth and humans, this is really profoundly important because our evolution did not happen by accident. Our evolution was adaptation. So as Earth changes were occurring, biological organisms were responding to the Earth by adjusting the genetics of the organism to sustain life. So you can never separate earth science from biology because that's one of the primary sources of information that controls our own biology.
What you're saying about the past is true in the present moment. It's happening to us right now. We are living this rare convergence, and I've talked about in this series, this convergence of natural rhythms and natural cycles, any one of which in and of themselves would be enough to change the way we think and live. But the fact that at least 3 of these cycles are converging, the climate cycle, economic cycles, and cycles of human conflict, they're all converging right now. They're creating the conditions that you're talking about that drive evolution. So the changes that are being forced upon us in the world, our world is changing. We can't stop that. We've got to either think and live differently or resist that change, and that's where the struggle comes from.
Well, I think resisting is futile in this particular case because the Earth is a lot bigger than we are on this, and while we have certainly put our hand in the system and messed it up a bit, the Earth is trying to get us to come back. It's giving us these lessons. It says, if you don't learn to live in harmony, then you won't be here either, because extinction is going to affect all of us. And we're not talking 1,000 years from now. We're talking within a century. And so it really is important for people to wake up and say, what have we done and why have we done it? And is there a better way to do it? And this is why I enjoy our collaboration, because we offer answers to those very vital questions.
We've covered a lot of ground through the work that we've done together and through these interviews. And the new discoveries, it's not like they happen at a fixed moment in time. They are constant, they are ongoing. The best science of the modern world continues to reveal the deepest truths of our existence that tell us that we are not what we've been told in the past, much more than we've been led to believe, and empower us to embrace change in a healthy way. And I just want to ask you, just as a general question, based upon everything that you've discovered now and the things that we share, how do you feel about our world today? How do you feel about where we are? Are you optimistic? Are you pessimistic?
Well, the most important thing, the way I see it right now, is that we're exactly where we are supposed to be, that we're in a process of evolution, and we're moving from a non-sustainable world into one that is sustainable. Very significant in that is there's a structure of the world that we're living in, and it turns out science has revealed that the culture that we have created on this planet is actually precipitating what is called the sixth mass extinction of life, which of course will include humans as well. And since it's based on human behavior, the only way out of the problem is to change human behavior, which by definition, change human culture. So we're in a process where the culture that we were raised with, it has to come down so we can build on a better foundation, a culture we can thrive into the future with. So where we were in the process of the original one coming down and a new one forming at the same time. And when you look outside and you go, oh my God, it looks kind of crazy outside. And well, that would be the appearance of this chaos as an old system is disassembling and a new system is coming together. And so are we in the right place? I think we're exactly in the right place.
Well, it fits right into the model that both you and I have adhered to independently, and we both, there's a lot of overlap in the way that we see in terms of cycles and trends. The only things breaking down are the things that are unsustainable. If we waited for the moment that we needed a new way of thinking, if we waited for that moment to try to develop new ways of living and thinking, it'd be too late. And the beauty is now, for the last half of the 20th century, now the early part of the 21st century, we've already got everything that we need to implement the new ways of thinking, new ways of living, sustainable ways of being in this world. So it's not like we have to go back to square one and say, oh God, now what are we going to do? We already know what to do. And it makes that transition so much easier. I think the key, I'm finding the key, is to make the new discoveries accessible to a broad general audience rather than the very specific audiences. In the scientific community, for example, they publish in peer-reviewed journals that are only read by their peers. You don't see that in the broad general audience. So how, in your opinion, what is the best way? How can we share this so that people can thrive?
What we're really in a position to do right now is recognize a very important fact: knowledge is power. And well, people have heard that. It's more important to hear the corollary. A lack of knowledge is a lack of power. And we have been deprived of the knowledge that people know at the front end, the head scientists, the head economic people, and they talk in their own circles, as you said. But until that information comes into the public, then the public has no power to deal with this. Right. So the first part of our evolution is first we must wake up and wake up to who we are, what we are, and where we're going. And this information is not available in conventional schools and conventional curriculum. So it's a time for us to bring to the public, when we get a chance to present, we present stuff that is really only discussed at some higher level and never comes down. And why we do this, and it's so important, is then we give the public this knowledge, which empowers them to make the change. So the knowledge is, yeah, we're going through an evolution, that when you see the world looking kind of crazy, that's not a scary thing. That's actually one of the most hopeful things in the world, because if it actually stayed the same, we would have a much more rapid extinction process than we have right now.
Well, again, we've talked about this before. The only things that are really unraveling right now are the things that are unsustainable. And they're based on a way of thinking. It was introduced in the mid-1800s when Darwin introduced his ideas. And I met with a group of young people recently. And when you talk about the 1800s to a group of millennials, it is like, when you look at their eyes, and it's just, they can't even they look at me and they say, well, you were born in the 20th century, and that was like the last century. So they're already thinking, along the lines that these are old discoveries. And so they asked me, they said, okay, Gregg, Darwin, mid-1800s, 1859, he published his book, Origin of Species. This is 21st century. What difference could it possibly make? And it's a good question. And when I tell them that the society that we have come to depend upon, that we're living in today, the foundations of that society were built in late 1800s, early 1900s, upon the principles that were embraced quickly that were introduced by Charles Darwin. So the economic principles of competition, the corporate system, the way we share vital resources. So this is why I think it's so important that we have a new story.
It has to be, because the story is the cause of the problem. So right away it says you can't solve the problem with the same thinking that created the problem. Albert said that.
Yeah.
And the reality is new thinking is coming in, thank God, because there's an opportunity to change the thinking. And it's interesting because the millennial generation people are the ones, of course, that haven't been so fully groomed with the old belief system that they're still open to have another option presented to them.
Sure.
And what we're seeing from the front end of science is, oh my God, the new sciences are really all about self-empowerment, how we can control our lives, control our health, create what we're unfolding. And one of the ones I love the most is because it's so basic, fundamental to everything in the world, and it comes from quantum physics, which is the most valid science on this planet. There is no science with more truth. And the first principle of quantum physics is consciousness is creating our life experiences. And I go, well, profoundly simple statement, but profoundly simple meaning, and that is, if you change your consciousness, then you change your life experiences. And this is what we need to do. We have to get out of the old consciousness of limitation, old consciousness of competition, and that violence is a necessary part of our biology, which the Germans actually wrote in a science paper that war is a necessary part of our evolution.
Yeah.
And so these old beliefs are really holding us behind. And the new beliefs are more important because the new beliefs take us into community. The rather Darwinian theory is based on individual. Who's the most fit, the fittest individual? And I say, well, wow, that's just basic competition. Now, who's going to find they're going to be the fittest? Who's going to fight for the top? And I say the new biology is like not based on the fittest, it's based on those that can fit in the best, those that can adapt the best, those that live in a community and harmony. So all of a sudden it says evolution is not the separation based on one individual competing with another individual. The evolution is the people coming together in a community and sharing awareness, which is the foundation of a process called emergence, which means you may know all the individual pieces. So for example, an electric engineering person knows a resistor, a capacitor, a transistor, transformers, all these pieces. And the reality is, well, you have all the knowledge of all the pieces, but it's only when you can put the pieces together and create something like a computer. The computer comes out of the pieces. You can't see the computer in the pieces. You can only, when you bring them together, see that. And so what we're in a very similar kind of emergence right now. We have a lot of intelligence about a lot of things, but until it all comes together and creates the image of the future, then we're capable of moving into that.
Well, I think, and what you're saying is it happens on levels within levels within levels. And for me, and I recognize this when I was in the corporations, the most fundamental levels is that we have taken nature, compartmentalized nature in these little boxes that we're comfortable studying, like a box called geology. I'm a geologist,
yeah.
Or chemistry or physics or biology. Nature doesn't know about those boxes. There is no boundary. Where do you draw the line between where does chemistry end and biology begin? Where does quantum physics end and everything else begin? The answer is the minute you draw that line, you're locked into the separation and the false assumptions. So, as a scientist, I've always wanted to ask you this question. As a scientist, if our world mirrored on a biological level everything that you found to be true in cells and biology, what would our world look like today? How would our world model society, families, populations after what the cell is teaching us about life?
Well, the first thing we have to understand about a cell is that all of the functions that are in a human are already present in almost all of our cells. So a human doesn't have anything new that a cell has. And I say, then what is a human? I say, well, we see it as an individual, as a one entity. The truth is a human is a community of 50 trillion cells. And guess what? Cells have jobs, cells have an economy, cells have a healthcare system, they have a government. All of the functions that we express in our outer world are totally reflected by the functions expressed on the inner world. The relevance is this: think about that your body is made out of 50 trillion individual cells, and every cell is like a miniature human. I say, my goodness, there's a community of 50 trillion humans living in harmony under our skin. And all of a sudden I say, well, they have the same needs and the same requirements that we as individuals have. And the new science, which is called biomimicry, is really the leading edge science. It says, well, how can 50 trillion cells live in harmony and work together and create health? And the idea is once you start to look inside and see the exchanges of how they relate to each other, how there's an economy, there's actually a money moving around in a system, and you start to realize the economy in the biology is so different than the economy in our human world that if you understand the biology and inside the economy, we can create a healthy world out here. There's only 8 billion of us and there's 50 trillion cells inside. They have a lot to teach us. And fortunately for me, I was excited to be a cell biologist because I observed cells for many, many, many years and cloning them and studying them and seeing how they work. And that's what helped change my entire life because I didn't take my lessons from society and the conventional stuff. I took them from the cells. And once I started to live according to the principles the cells taught me, my life completely changed on this planet.